for information. Somebody in the apron now, I haven't got any information who they are and what are they doing. For information, for all your own security, please don't move and stay your gate.
Yes, ma'am, is it possible our passenger is disembark from aircraft because there is a lot of dangerous for us.
Sir, there is an unusual and military operation now. No startup, no pushback, no response, any section, approach or ACC, sir.
But I know it is possible some person to open the gate and our passenger is disembark to the terminal. To the terminal is better. There is a lot of fire, a lot of gunfire.
Cuma akşamı Türkiye için en uzun geceydi.
First of all, I need to say that Friday night was one of the longest nights for Turkey. But shortly, Junta had two aims. One is taking over Turkish armed forces, and the second is to prevent any politicians who would be a problem for them.
Türkiye için çok uzun bir gece oldu.
They came in a very aggressive posture, and they had like their rifles in their hands, and they were ready to do something. We don't know exactly what.
My first reaction was just confusion. We started to get all these reports on social media and on the news wires that there were low-flying jets in Ankara, soldiers closing off the bridges in Istanbul. We're very close to the bridge.
We were told that we needed to leave the premises as soon as possible. The army were getting quite aggressive at that point. I was lucky enough to be able to get a lift with a colleague. And as we were leaving, we put our phones, we were told by the soldiers to leave our phones behind. And yeah, we were concerned about how our colleagues were going to get home, those who didn't have cars, those who didn't have access to the bus services which TRT offers home.
Hiçbir vatandaşımızın zarar görmesine müsaade edilmeyecek. Kamu düzeninin bozulmasına fırsat verilmeyecektir. Hiçbir ayrım yapılmaksızın tüm vatandaşlarımızın ifade özgürlüğü, mülkiyet hakkı, evrensel temel hak ve hürriyeti Yurtta Sulh Konseyi'nin teminatı altındadır.
İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar efendim, buyurun.
Good evening. These latest developments, in fact, come from a minority within our armed forces. This is an act that was supported and led by that infamous group that we refer to as a parallel state structure. I believe that as a nation, we will give the right reply to this act and that they will be punished because they are acting against the unity and integrity of our country. Now, I want to call upon my nation. I want to invite you to come to the squares and airports of our cities. Let's gather together in the squares. Let's let this minority group bring their tanks and cannons and let them do as they wish to the people. I don't recognize any power superior to that of the people.
Halka orada yapsınlar. Halkın gücünün üstünde bir güç ben tanımadım bugüne kadar.
O gece 4 tane helikopterle
Air Force teams left for Marmaris with 4 helicopters that night. While they were leaving, they said something important in the helicopter. You were going to come into our den, now we are coming into yours. This radio talk among themselves was picked up by the National Intelligence Organization. Then they called the head of the protective detail for the president and asked them to leave the hotel. The president had left the hotel 15 minutes before these helicopters arrived.
Otelden çıkmıştı.
Televizyon, demokrasi var. Güçlü Türkiye var. Kaplıca meydan, televizyon,
Bizim aldığımız istihbarat yaklaşık 8...
According to the intelligence we got, they planned this 8 months ago. They decided to organize this coup 8 months ago. My guess is July 15 was not their target date, but the members of this group in the Turkish armed forces, police forces, justice and other civilian institutions knew that they would not have any other chance once the Istanbul's chief prosecutor's office prepared formal criminal charges against them. So they had to move the coup date to an earlier date, meaning July 15 coup attempt was an action that was made earlier than it was planned.
Fethullah Gulen has a target. Head of Journalists and Writers Foundation, Mustafa Yesil, and his assistant came to this very apartment to convince me. I told them as the Hizmet movement that we were interested in promoting morals, trust and sufferance. We shouldn't be trying to infiltrate to the judiciary, the police or the armed forces. I told them it was quite disturbing to me. To convince me, they admitted their coup intentions that day. They said that Gulen said that in order for us to survive in this part of the world, we must be part of the Turkish military. I talked about this many times on television. I wrote about it in my column that this important artery is the Turkish armed forces. And to convince me, he was telling me this is what Fethullah Gulen was saying personally. After hearing this, I was convinced that there was preparation within the armed forces for a coup.
I was at home on Friday night. I decided to go out after watching our president's speech on TV because I have a motorcycle and I thought it can be easier for me to reach some places. My intention was to go to TRT Ulu Studios. I knew that the first bridge was closed, so I went for the second one actually. With the sonic bomb started as the fighter's jet came very close to the ground. I stopped just before the bridge. It was the area called Kavacık. I saw there a military vehicle stopped by the citizens. They blocked the road with their private cars in order to not to let the military cars.
Kimliğini göster bakayım. İn lan aşağı. Kimliğini göster lan. Kimliğini göster lan. Gel aşağı gel. Ne var? Vurun. Ne var? Ne var? Hayır! Vurun! Hayır! Hayır lan! Vurun! Ya hayır. Ne oldu? Yani bize hayır. Hepimiz ha. Tamam da hepimiz insan değil miyiz? Hayır ya! Hayır. Aç bir. Yediğiniz lokmaların haram. Sussun it! Ali abi gel asker silah çekiyor gel abi gel. Gel. Çabuk çıkın. Çıkın.
With my personal experiences during the coup attempt, I was located on the bridge, and most of the people there that I witnessed went there after the bridge was cleared. After the protests broke out, people made their way to the bridge. Before I got onto the bridge, I was located in front of the president's home, and there were announcements being made telling us not to go to the bridge because there was a fire against civilian targets. And as soon as we, as the people, heard that, we took it upon ourselves to go there and see what it was for ourselves. While we were on the bridge, we had lots of gunfire targeted towards us. In the process, there were people right next to me who got shot down. We had wounded, we had people dying, pools of blood everywhere. So to be honest, it was a shocking experience. I saw about either 2 or 3 people actually die in front of my own eyes. That I can confirm. The others were just injured. The violence was actually pretty terrible. There was deliberate gunfire. There were tanks firing shells at us. There were F-16 fighter jets making flyby maneuvers to somehow scare the crowd to leave. However, one thing that proved to be even more exciting was the level of commitment, the devotion, the coordination, and the organization of the people. Of course, we were all in shock, we were fearful for our lives, but in the end of the day, we put all of that aside and we did everything we could to protect one another, and we helped one another as well.
We heard that the tanks were out of the bases and they were so close to us. Actually, they were 1 kilometer away from our location, and we just started to walk to there. And I started shouting, "What are you doing? Whose soldiers are you? What are you doing here?" And I started tweeting, taking pictures and showing the people what's really going on there. It was amazing. It was not only me, but hundreds of people, thousands of people were out in the streets in seconds, in minutes. And I know that I was not alone. The whole country, the Turkish people, showed that they will not let that happen again to our country.
Tamam. Var mı?
Ben ölmeye hazırım. Sen beni öldürmeye hazır mısın?
When I was on Vatan Street, where I stood up in front of the tanks, there were several wounded. But then when we secured this location in Vatan District, I went to Fatih, Saraçhane, and there was a massacre there. Tens of friends died, and an 11-year-old boy died in front of my eyes. He was 2 meters away from me, and he was shot in the head. And there were lots of people wounded on the roads, and it was crazy. There were sirens, there were gunshots. It was like we are in a war.
When I arrived at TRT Ulus studios in Istanbul, there were about 600 people in front of the buildings.
TRT Ulus stüdyoları, TRT Arapça'nın, TRT Spor'un, TRT Müzik, TRT'nin yeni açılan uluslararası İngilizce yayın yapan kanalı TRT World'un da olmuş olduğu bina.
Police forces were there and they tried to convince the soldiers to surrender until the morning. Sonic booms continued and the soldiers started to fire.
Şu an bomba patladı. Ciddi anlamda bir patlama var.
Mehmetçiğimiz olarak, Mehmetlerimiz olarak şu anda karşınızda bulunan halka, sizin annelerinize, babalarınıza, kardeşlerinize karşı silah doğrultmanızı asla kabul etmemiz mümkün değil. Bu silahlar size bu millet tarafından verildi.
One thing with regard to the soldiers was there was deliberate fire against civilian targets. Every time police tried to intervene somehow, they would fire at civilians to force the police to somehow stand down. And this is the reason why the standoff lasted for so long. If the police desired to put an end to this standoff, they would have just used their sheer force to neutralize the threat. But the main thing that they focused on was to neutralize the threat without causing any casualties to the soldiers. The police spent long hours telling the soldiers that what they were doing was wrong, that they were our children, that they were our people, they belong to us, and that we don't want them to do any more wrong than they have done. So in the end of the day, when the soldiers did surrender, they surrendered as a result of a very peaceful negotiation. So I want to thank the police force specifically for that, for their efforts.
With the early morning lights, they finally surrendered, and I was allowed into the building. When I got inside, I was shocked as they broke the doors, tried to cut the random cables, and broke the window of the praying room and the cafeteria.
Evet. Şimdi size bahsetmiş olduğum TRT'nin alanı çok geniş bir alan gerçekten de.
Actually, right now I'm thrilling. I salute Turkish people. I salute my people that showed the world they would stand up again any second. They will not hesitate any second to stop any attack against their country. And I was there. I witnessed that. I was a part of it. And today I'm standing right here thanks to my people.
Ordu içinde
Actually, you can look at this form in two different points of view. The first one is that it was a conflict between a group of soldiers who are siding with the politicians and those who are loyal to Fethullah Gulen. If they had been able to filtrate into the army fully, we would not be having this interview today. Those who came with these vehicles would be here. But when especially the soldiers who believed in democracy did not participate in this attempt, that group did not become successful.
ekip başarıya ulaşmak.
Işık evler diye Fethullah Gülen'in tabir ettiği bir şey var. Şimdi herkes şunu merak ediyor.
They did this through something that Gulen calls houses. Since the brainwashing starts during the high school years, military high school years, even when those students later become generals, they see Fethullah Gulen as a chosen savior, awaiting a divine person. They do not obey the command and orders of their commanders. They obey the orders of the chosen savior, the cleric of the universe, Fethullah Gulen. For this reason, questioning why these people do not listen to their commanders and how come a top aide did not follow orders of the chief of military staff does not work. I learned this from the retired Lieutenant Colonel about what they do. These people give weekly reports to their older brothers in person. They're giving reports on everything in their own units through the week. The older brother gives it to his own older brother, and so they can inform Fethullah Gulen on everything that happened in a week in every unit of the Turkish armed forces.
Bir hafta içerisinde ne olmuşsa.
Maalesef bu kalkışma bastırılmıştır. Ancak şehitlerimiz vardır. Toplam 161 şehidimiz şu ana kadar mevcuttur. 1440 yaralımız vardır. Bu aşağılık kalkışmaya
Darbeci misiniz?
Acele.
Darbe 12 saatten az sürdü ama
The coup lasted less than 12 hours, but I think the main elements of this coup are still there, because this group works in a crypto system. When you look at the structuring of this group, you see that those closest to the chief of staff and force commanders were the ones who attempted this coup. Aides and those who had led very important intelligence units have organized this. I'm asking this. Where else in Turkey did these people occupying these important positions put people in other positions? Today we are saying we prevented the coup, but I think only the first attempt has been prevented. There will definitely be other waves. For this reason, Turkey definitely needs to have a security-related decision and prepare against those who will try to do this. Yes, difficult times are ahead for Turkey. When Turkey is fighting against PKK and Daesh, it'll have to fight against Gulen. It'll have to fight against Gulen's organization coup attempt. This process is really difficult for all of us. This is a time that we need to overcome by standing shoulder to shoulder, and not just armed forces, but also all Turkish people, all politicians. If Turkey loses this, Europe and US will too. We saw what disorder means in Iraq, Syria and Libya. Compared to Turkey's power and influence, these are small countries. If Turkey is dragged towards any disintegration or civil unrest, believe me, there will be no Europe or no US left.
İnanın ne Avrupa kalır ne ABD kalır.
The terrorist organization has now been dealt a blow. What else are they capable of looking ahead?
Şimdi Fethullah Gülen bu işin başında olduğu için o Türkiye'ye teslim edilirse kesinlikle bu hareket sıfırlanır.
Since Fethullah Gulen is the leader of this group, if he is extradited to Turkey, then this group will diminish to nothing. And his men will be like fish washing up on the shore. But as long as he is not extradited back to Turkey and he is the leader, he will not give up. And his threat will continue.
Darbeden sonraki günlerdeki operasyonlar.
I'm looking at the operations after the coup attempt, and I see that there is a serious amount of cleaning in the judiciary, ministries and armed forces. Their strength will be weakened, but where are the hidden men? Where do they have sleeping cells? I think the threat is ongoing, since we do not know where they are.
Halen nerelerde uyuyan hücreleri var? Bunları bilmediğimiz için bu tehlike bence devam ediyor.
Arkadaşlar açılın biraz çeksin.